Zen 5 is finally here, and it turns out my predictions for it were a bit optimistic. It's even worse than expected with negative reviews across the board. But is that the whole story? Actually, when you think about it, this launch makes perfect sense for AMD, and it's very much in line with their strategy as a company. And it's not even a new strategy. It's the same strategy AMD employed with Zen 2 5 years ago.
This video is sponsored by urcdkeys.com. If you pay full price for a Windows 11 key, you are wasting your money. Instead, you can get a Windows 11 OEM key from urcdkeys.com for just over $29, or even lower at $21.86 if you use my coupon code C25 at checkout. All URCD Keys product keys are on sale right now, so don't miss the Super Spring sale. Follow the link below to the Windows 11 page at urcdkeys.com. Click Purchase, enter your C25 discount code. You can pay with a credit card or PayPal, and then just add the Windows key to your Windows activation settings and you're done. The code is sent to you within minutes, by the way. You can also use my C25 code on other products, so if you need Office 2019, make sure to get it from urcdkeys.com for a much lower price than retail. Check the exclusive links in the video description to get your cheap OEM Windows or Office keys today from urcdkeys.com.
Looking through the reviews for the 9600X and the 9700X, you'd be forgiven to think Lisa Su and company have lost their marbles. The 9700X, for instance, at $360 is in some workloads slower than the CPU it's replacing, the 7700X, which currently goes for $290. That definitely comes as a surprise when not too long ago at the AMD Tech Day, the company promised a 16% average IPC uplift. Even in the instances where the 9700X is faster than the 7700X, it's not by 16%, but rather by a modest 3 to 5%. For instance, in Cinebench R23, AMD shows up to 16% gains versus Zen 4, but looking at Guru 3D's review numbers as an example, the uplift is only 11% in single-threaded performance versus the 7700X. Now you might say that IPC uplifts don't correlate to performance in these specific workloads, but even normalized at 3500 MHz in Cinebench 15 single thread, there's just under a 10% uplift. In fact, to get close to what AMD has promised, you have to go down to the 5700G, which launched 3 years ago. As far as gaming is concerned, while there are a few positive results like in Far Cry 6, or for instance here in TechSpot's Assetto Corsa benchmark, where the 9700X was 18% faster than the 7700X, which is the sort of jump we'd like to see across the board for a new generation of CPUs. The reality is that these are outliers, and as I mentioned before, there are even cases where this chip is slower than the previous generation. An example of that is seen here in TechSpot's benchmark of The Last of Us Part 1, where the 9700X is 3% slower than the chip it's replacing. How on earth is that even possible? Well, not only is it possible, but it actually makes perfect sense. You have to remember that TSMC's N4P is either 11% faster than N5 at ISO power or 22% more efficient at ISO performance. You can't have both, but why would AMD choose the latter? Well, for that we have to go back to Zen 2. Launched 5 years ago, this was the first mainstream chiplets-based CPU, which allowed AMD to scale from up to a 2-complex core die in the mainstream products to 8 CCDs in Threadripper for workstations and also 8 CCDs in the data center with Gen 2 EPYC Rome, the only difference being the I/O dies. The core chiplets were the same whether you bought a Ryzen 5 3600 or an EPYC 7702. That was the goal of AMD's chiplet strategy: get improved yields and only have to tape out one chip. Jump to 2024, and when you look at Phoronix's review of Zen 5, it's clear that this strategy is still in place, except AMD's favoring the sort of workloads that are common in the data center, not in desktop applications. For instance, when you look at Memcached, which is a distributed memory object caching system, so so CPU and memory focused workloads for servers, and you test operations per second per watt, the 9700X is just insane in this scenario, being 189% faster than the 7700X that it's replacing, and topping the chart by a comfortable margin. This is the sort of metric that companies like Amazon, Google, and Meta will be looking at. This gives them more performance at a fixed power target, in a time where data center energy costs are ballooning, now taking up an estimated 4 to 6% of the world's energy. Looking at raw performance, if we look at an Apache server, and this is on Linux of course, with 500 concurrent requests, the 9700X is up there with the 13900K, and only 4.5% slower than the 14900K, while being a massive 76% faster than the chip it's replacing, the 7700X. In Python, it takes the lead in single-threaded workloads like here in Pi Performance 1.11, where we see that the uplift versus last generation Zen is almost 30%. And of course, let's not forget AI. And in TensorFlow running the ResNet 50 model, the 9700X leads ahead of even the 7950X with 4 extra images per second than the 14900K, while consuming only 79 watts, with the Intel chip consuming 210 watts for the same workload. So that means that in one of the most in-demand workloads in data centers, this $360 chip is faster than Intel's best, which costs around $560, and it consumes 79 watts, while Intel's consumes 210 watts doing the same thing. So that might put Zen 5 in perspective. Do you really think AMD cares about the desktop market when they can sell tons of Zen 5 chips to Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft Azure, and even Apple, at least until they have their own server chips? Do you think AMD gives two shits about reviewers and influencers calling Zen 5 a fail when they will be banking like crazy on the back of the AI craze, not to mention the need to reduce data center power consumption that will drive upgrades across the board? And all this at a time where Intel chips are dying left and right in data centers from excess voltages, and so many data centers are just moving to AMD platforms. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not defending AMD here. I maintain what I said in my last video. The Zen 5 chips are unbuyable. And of course I got the usual comments that I'm an AMD hater and all that. Well, the reviews have proven me right, and I maintain that position. The Zen 5 non-X chips are a scam for unaware consumers, at least for the DIY market, capitalizing on the Zen brand name while selling dies that wouldn't make it to EPYC servers or other data center focused products. They're the same dies that go into the actual products that AMD wants to sell, and AMD is launching them ahead of the X3D variants because Intel is scrambling to get their act together. When Intel finally launches 15th gen desktop products, AMD will launch the only Zen 5 desktop chips that they should be launching, the X3D ones. From a greedy corporate perspective, it's a brilliant strategy from AMD, and it's coherent with today's corporate view of just looking at next quarter results. And honestly, it's consistent with their strategy for the last 5 years or so. From a long-term perspective, in my opinion, this is highly damaging to AMD's brand image. While their brand awareness might be on the up, their brand image is definitely going down the toilet, with both savvy consumers and reviewers seeing through these cash grabs that AMD has gotten into the habit of releasing. What a time to be a PC enthusiast. Now, it is definitely a good time to be a Cortex enthusiast, and you can support my channel on Patreon by following the link in the end cards. By doing so, you'll get access to the Cortex Discord server, a great community that's informed and welcoming. Thanks for watching, and until the next one.